Welcome back to the lineup. My name is LJ Mazzilli. It's my partner,
Mike Holt.
And we got my first guest on the episode, Lee Mazzilli. How's it going?
It's dad to you.
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
I want to thank everyone for coming out. I also wanted to just address the elephant in the room. I really think there's a couple elephants. I mean, yes, I'm wearing two different socks right now. Lacey's been sick. The laundry's been a little out of it, so avoid that. But I did have a lot of questions for Lee. LJ was thankfully asked, and it's the holiday season. The love is in the air. For all of you that don't know, I date his daughter, Lacey. I date Lacey and LJ, both of them. Say it, 5 years plus. We're doing great. If anyone wants to know, we're doing great. But it's that time of year. It's the holiday season, magical. And I wanted to open up this launch ceremony and just have a really great question to ask Lee.
Well, everyone's been wondering the same question. Everyone's been asking you the same question.
And that's why
right?
exactly.
You've been dating for 5 years.
Exactly.
Right?
So
the big question is what?
I just wanted to know what I'm getting for Christmas. What are you getting me for Christmas? That's all I wanted to know. That's it.
So Dad, I got a question for you. What started your love for the game of baseball? How'd you get into baseball?
That question is asked a lot, like when you first start. Let's say when you're 4 or 5 years old. And, my dad wasn't a baseball guy where he would teach me how to play baseball, where he would, say where to hold my hands or how to feel the ball. But, my dad was a guy that was a person that was there every day, no matter where I played. He would drive to, I look in the stands, and there he was. But I learned to play baseball, believe it or not, and most people in New York understand this, in the schoolyards of New York. In PS 209, and I played with my older brother. And my older brother was 7 years older than I was, and I was playing on his teams. And I remember Uncle Freddie would say to me, "Oh, I got my little brother. He's on our team." And everyone else was 7 years older than me. But I played with them, and I learned to play baseball with older players. And those were probably the best days of my life, playing softball in the schoolyards and playing stickball, punchball, slapball, all the things that we did in Brooklyn. But we learned the athletic part of the game, and I learned so much. I really did. So if you ask me where I learned to play, I would say in the schoolyards of New York is where I started to play.
Did you hold your own with the
Yeah, very much
guys?
so. That's because Uncle Freddie always picked me, because he knew that, when we played, all his friends would say, "He's a little runt, he can't play," And Uncle Freddie knew all the time. And I did. I learned a lot of baseball. Softball, we played softball there.
That's awesome.
And it just went on from there, obviously. But I think back in the day when, during the 70s when we played in New York, that was the biggest sport. So you didn't have soccer, football wasn't as big as it is now, and lacrosse. You didn't have all the other sports. You had baseball. So for us, in growing up and playing in the parade grounds in Marine Park, you played 60, 70 games, 80 games during the summer. I used to play on 3 different teams. One night I play on one team, the next day I play on another team, just to play every day. And baseball in New York back then was the sport to play. And every one of your friends all played. So, my love started from there and just grew and grew and grew.
Was there like a specific point in time where you realized you were talented?
Good question. No, I didn't know when. And I'm going to tell you when I got drafted, which kind of surprised me. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, maybe I am good at this sport. Because I knew I was going to get drafted. I knew I was a good player at a young age. I didn't know how good until the draft. And my dream, and both your dreams were you want to play pro ball, was to get drafted. And you didn't care where, what team, or you wanted to be with a home team. And I was a senior in high school, and the draft was on, and there was obviously no cell phones, or you couldn't get in touch with anyone. And I remember being in Lincoln High School, and I wasn't exactly in class that particular day, but I was roaming the hallways. And as I was roaming the hallway, I ran into my my baseball coach. And I went, oh, Christ, he just caught me out cutting class or
Yeah.
something. And he looked at me like, and I looked at him, and he goes, did you hear anything? And I said, no. What's up? He goes, and he went to me, he went like this, Mets. And he put his finger up like that, Mets. I went, Mets #1. I had no idea that I was going to be their #1 pick. And I remember being in school, and I ran all the way home, I think I had Auntie Joe's car, I think that day. She lent it to me. And I went home to see Pops and gave him a big hug and realized then that I was a #1 pick for the New York Mets. And then you realize that, hey, maybe he's a pretty good player.
So I remember you telling me something about making a decision between baseball and speed skating at the time when you first got drafted. Did you have to sit down and talk about that?
No, because I knew in my heart what I wanted to do. It was not an easy decision. I look back now, I kind of regret missing an opportunity to skate. But back in 1970, in the 70s, in 72, the Olympics were in Sapporo, Japan. And that's where I could have gone or trained for. But you couldn't be a professional and amateur at the same time. You couldn't have both status. Now you could be professional and play in the Olympics. Back then you couldn't. You had to be a full amateur. And I was making a decision because I was getting drafted in 1973. And that summer before, obviously you both know how important it is to get your grade up as a player, so to speak, the year before, so you have to really play that year before. So I had to forego that opportunity to go to the Air Force Academy in Colorado to train for the U.S. speed skating team. And at that time, no, I didn't think anything of it, so I picked the right sport. But now you look back now and you kind of say, I wish I had a chance to represent my country in that speed skating, but I think the right decision. It's good.
Yeah, I think we all think you made the right decision.
It's good.
And then, so you signed out of high school, right? You're in your first professional year as a baseball player. I remember you telling me that you got homesick. You were in Florida at the time?
Yeah, well, I was playing in the instructional league, and me and your uncle, my brother, Uncle Freddie, came down to visit me, and I was so homesick. I mean, I was like, every night I was like crying. And back then we were in St. Petersburg, Florida, and in the 70s, at 7, 8 o'clock, that's it. It's closed down, and I was just not used to that. And I didn't know anyone. I was there all alone, and I'll never forget the day. It was the only time that my brother really just yelled at me. He went down. He said to me, "Bro, I'm going down to the pool at the hotel." I said, "Okay." So I'm going to lay in the sun. So he said he's going to lay in the sun. And as he went down to the pool, I went up to the hotel, packed all my bags up. I loaded up the car. Wow. And I came down, and he came back. He saw me loading the car up. He says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I ain't got to go home. I don't like it here." He goes, "What?" He goes, "You unload that car right now. And you get everything back in that room, I'm going to break your legs." He goes, you have an obligation to the organization, you have a commitment to this team, and you're going to go back and you're going to play. And quit crying and being a baby. Now get all that stuff back up in your room. I'll never forget that as long as I live. Because I wanted to go home. I thought it was it. I wasn't going to be able to handle this. And I never forget him saying that you have an obligation. You have a commitment, and you have to honor that. And trust me, I took everything back to the room. But I remember him telling me that. I was ready to go.
Would you attribute all your success and things that you've accomplished to that moment?
A big part of it, no doubt. Because if he was not there, I was gone. There was no doubt in my mind. I would have been on I-95.
You don't think Noonie and Poppy would have told you to stay?
Nope. Oh, they probably, when I got home, they'd say you'd have to go back. But at that moment, I would have been gone for sure. And
was Bobby Valentine your roommate yet at that point?
No. Bobby Valentine and I became roommates 1978. So Bobby was involved in the Tom Seaver trade. Dave Kingman, I'm sorry. He was traded for Dave Kingman. And that's when Seaver was traded. That was the big midnight massacre in New York. And Bobby came over, and being, you know, a guy from the East, we kind of hit it off, being Italian and stuff. And we became really close. And then at that time, you had to have roommates. Nowadays, there's no roommates. You have your own room. Guys have suites and all that. But you had to have a roommate. And Bobby and I became roommates. And we've been like, you know, brothers ever since. So we learned a lot of baseball together.
So tell us about the moment when you got first called up to the big league.
Best day of my life as a professional athlete. I think, Mike, you're gonna answer to that. I was playing Double-A baseball in Jackson, Mississippi. Another culture shock, you know, being down south. You know, I lived in Pearl, Mississippi, and my manager was Johnny Antonelli, and he called me in his room, in his office. He had a southern accent, and he said, you know, you're going to go to the big league, son. And I looked at him, and I was like staring. I don't know how you were like that, because that was your dream. Yeah. You want to play pro ball. Even though you're playing pro ball, you don't think you're going to get to the big leagues. Even, it doesn't matter how good you are. You still don't think you're going to get to the big leagues until someone calls you and says you're going up. And he told me that. And I met the team in Chicago, Wrigley Field. And if anyone knows about Wrigley Field, it's like St. Patrick's Cathedral in Chicago. Everyone knows Wrigley Field. I get in a cab, and I said to the cab driver, I'm going to Wrigley Field. And I pulled out a piece of paper, and I went, it's on Clark and Addison. Like, this guy's looking at me like, this guy's an idiot. You don't know where it's at. And I walked into Wrigley Field, and I carried all my bags. I had like 3 suitcases. I carried up the old Wrigley Field. We have to go up stairs one way, and then you got to go like this and up here. And I finally get into the clubhouse, and it just took you back. And there was Tom Seaver, and there was Jerry Koosman, and Buddy Harrelson for the Mets. Guys that, you know, 2 years before, I'm in high school watching these guys. And then the traveling secretary comes up to me and goes, do you know Joe Torre? I said, no. I said, have you met Joe? I said, no. He said, well, come with me. And I go to the training room. He's sitting laying down on a table. It's the first time I met Joe. 49 years ago, I guess, whatever. And he's sitting on a table like this, right? And laying on the table. He's got his glasses on, like really down here. Mm-hmm. He's got a racing form in his hand and a cigar in his mouth. I saw it. This is Joe Torre, and I said, damn, I'm going to like this playing up here. I said, there he was. And then, you know, we went to that game, and they said, you know, you're not going to play. You're just going to watch. We're going to get the feel of the major leagues. And Joe said, you stay with me. And I stood with him for, I don't know, 47 years. I guess we've been friends since that day.
So it all started then?
It all started then.
And how old were you when you got called up?
I was 20, 21.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Early on.
Yeah, I was very fortunate to play with Tom Seaver, Jerry Koosman, John Matlock, Jerry Grody, you know what I'm saying, Torrey, Ed Kranepool. Because at 76, they were a pretty good team. They finished third, but they were good. They were a veteran team. And, you know, you're talking about some of the greats that played. You know, Tom Seaver, to me, was the best all time. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot of baseball from them. I've always told you this. I learned a lot about hitting from Tom Seaver. Learned a lot of hitting from Tom Seaver. Because Tom Seaver would always say and always tell me how he would set up hitters. He'd say, you know, I throw him a curveball in the second inning, but I would hold my good curveball for the 7th inning. And I went, you got a good one, a better one than that, you know? But you learned it. And Jerry Koosman would always say, yeah, the young guys I would throw off-speed pitches to. Because I said, why is that? Because young guys are anxious. They want to hit that fastball. So I learned a lot of hitting stuff from the pitchers, you know, the great pitchers there.
That's pretty cool because not a lot of people think that way in the game. You know, they always go to like hitting coaches or, you know, offensive people that are successful and they try to like pick their brains. So yeah, that's interesting.
I think a lot of, it's a different avenue, but for me, you know, even when I teach hitting, and you both were really good hitters, you know, the key I always preached was situational hitting. You all have a gift to hit a baseball. You have a gift that a couple of 100 million people cannot do, and you're able to do that. And so it's not so much that as knowing what to do with that gift, and that's where that situation of counts and who's on base and things of that nature that takes you to that next level. You have great hitters. You know, look at Barry Bonds. You know, he's such a great hitter because he knew the strike zone so well. You know, ball was that much off the plate, he didn't swing. Then you look at other guys and they're swinging at everything. So, yeah, that's part of it.
Well, I'm going to definitely ask you a question about when Barry Bonds got called up when you were in Pittsburgh. That'll be following this question right now.
That's a good. Not too many people know about Barry Bonds being called up in Pittsburgh.
I would definitely want to get to that after this question, but I have a question I think everybody here wants to know: is when did you officially become the Italian Stallion?
Until this day, I do not know. You know,
it was just pegged on you?
Yes. And it's funny you said that, because when I played for the Yankees in '82, and God rest his soul, Phil Rizzuto was just one of the nicest human beings that God ever created, and Yogi Berra. And there's another person I got a chance to be around was Yogi Berra. He was an encyclopedia of baseball, those two guys. And we took a picture. Rick Cerrone, the catcher for the Yankees. It was Yogi, myself, Dave Righetti, and Rizzuto was on the outside of it. And the four of us, or five of us, it was a picture in the Yankee uniform, and the caption was, "Who is the real Italian Stallion?"
Oh, wow.
And it was so cool, man. So I don't know where that came from, but it was just being around him. And, you know, we could talk about hours about Yogi and Rizzuto and guys that meant a lot to me in my baseball career. I mean, it's just, you know, sitting with Yogi, and I said he was like an encyclopedia of baseball, it was just mind-boggling. It was just mind-boggling. And we'd sit on the bench in spring training, and he'd be like this, you know, and he'd be just looking straight ahead. And then a play would happen, whatever, and he'd be sitting next to me, and he'd go like this, like he'd nudge you, he goes, "Hey, he didn't back him up over there." And I know he didn't look. I know he didn't do that. He go, "He didn't back him up." And I would go like, "Son of a bitch, he's right. He didn't back him up." He saw everything. Yogi saw everything on the field. He was amazing. He was just a national treasure.
And what was everyone's reaction when you did get the label Italian Stallion? Because the question was, who's the real Italian Stallion?
None of us thought of any of that. We all thought it was kind of cool that we were all together.
Yeah.
How would you find out?
Yeah.
Have a poll and
I mean, it was all over the news, I guess.
Back then, we could take our shirt off. Now,
True,
we're not taking it off.
True.
All right.
I know that.
So I'll get back to that question about Barry Bonds. So I remember you telling me that you were in Pittsburgh playing, right? You just signed that deal with them. You were the guy coming out of spring training, and then
No, that was
it the fall?
No, it was like 4 years later.
Okay.
Yeah.
So while you were there, though, right? Mm-hmm. You were having a really good year. Is what you told me. And then Jim Leland,
year.
Well, he called you in the office and said, "We're going to call somebody up."
Right. So no, this was my last year in Pittsburgh. Not my first year. I was there playing. My last year, I was a veteran. I already had like 10 years in, and the Pirates were a young team. They were a young Billy team. Now, I thought I was getting traded back to the Mets in the spring of '86. And the Mets wanted me back. They couldn't work a deal out at that time. So I stayed with the Pirates through '86 till July. And I get a phone call. Now, Jim Leland was my manager, who I loved to death. We got along so well. And every day he'd walk into the clubhouse and he'd say, "Maz, you're still here?" I said, "Yeah, I am." And so I get a call one morning on July, I think it was July 24th, on your mom's birthday. And I get a call about 8 in the morning. And he says, hey, what are you doing? I went, huh? It's 8 in the morning. I said, what do you mean? I'm sleeping. What do you think I'm doing? We just had a night game. And he says, meet me in the general manager's office at 11 o'clock. I said, what for? He said, I just meet us in there. I said, no. He says, what do you mean, no? No, I'm not going. We had a good relationship. He says, I said to him, you got to tell me why I'm going to the office in the morning. I can't tell you. Just meet us there at 11 o'clock. I said, no, I'm not coming. And the guy said, what do you mean? You got to come. That's how he was. It wasn't like he demanded. I said, no, Jimmy, I'm not coming. I mean, I've been around here long enough. Tell me why I need to go. Then he finally said, well, because we had that relationship, like he didn't want to tell me, he felt bad. And he said, all right, listen, we have a deal on the table for you, and if we can't get the done deal by 11 o'clock, then you know, we're going to let you go. I said, fair enough. I'll be there at 11 o'clock, because he was honest with me, you know. So I went into, I'm trying to remember the general manager's name. Sid Thrift was his name. And he said, meet at Sid's office at 11 o'clock. I said, okay. We got there. And I remember walking in the office first, and Jim Leland was behind me, and they didn't make the deal. So they let me. But he was behind me, and I turn around, and this is like really the first guy that he really had to let go. And there his eyes were all red.
Tough.
Like it was tougher on him than it was on me, because he felt bad that he had to let me go. And I was okay with that, because I knew there was other things out there. And I said to Jimmy, I said, well, if you're going to let me go, then who are you trading for? So we're not trading anyone. He says, we're going to bring someone up for triple. I said, you're going to bring someone up for AAA over me? Really? I got 10 years. I'm an experienced player. I said, who's that? He goes, Barry Bonds. I said, oh, okay. So Barry Bonds was in spring training with us.
Wow.
As a young kid. And when he was 19 years old, you knew this kid was going to be a great player. Yeah, I mean, you knew it in spring training. And that's when they made the roster switch, and Barry Bonds took over. Yeah. And had an amazing career.
Yeah, not a lot of people know that.
Yeah, amazing career. But I said, you were releasing me for Barry Bonds? Are you kidding me? He laughed, and he thought it was funny. So we had a good time about it.
That's awesome. And then you went back to the Mets.
Yeah, and then I went back to the Mets in, I guess, July or August of '86. Although the story was that I came back and signed with the Mets, but I had 2 deals out there to go play somewhere else where they were multi-year contracts. I was going to sign a 2-year deal with 2 other clubs. Was out there, and all of a sudden my agent called and said, guess who called? And I said, who? He was interested, and he goes, the Mets. Now in '86, we all knew the Mets were the best team in baseball, or had one of the best teams. So now I'm kind of jealous that, you know, I was in Pittsburgh, and here, you know, I was there with the lean years, and now the Mets are winning, and I wasn't a part of that. You know, you want to be part of it. And he goes, do you have any interest? I said, well, let's hear him out. And they wanted me more so for '87 than '86. Okay, because, you know, they're already winning in '86. So I had to sit and think. I talked to Mom about this, and we weren't sure, but I knew I wanted to come back home. I need to be in New York. That's who I am. You know, I didn't want to be anywhere else. And then my agent called and said, there's no guarantee. I said, no guarantee for what? I want to be in the playoffs. I want to be in the World Series, right? Because the only guarantee is for '87. I said, well, I don't care about '87. I care about now. And they said, well, they won't give you a guarantee for this year. They'll call you up in September. This is like the end of August. They said they're going to call you up in September 1st, and you'll be on the 40-man roster. But if you're up, you're not eligible for the playoffs after September 1. So I said to my agent, I said, why do I want to go there September? I want to be in the playoffs and World Series. So we took a little time. You know, Mom and I, we talked about that. What do you want to do? And it wasn't a decision like that. You know, we thought about it a little bit, and finally, you know, we came to the conclusion that we're going to come back home. You know, and So I signed with the Mets with zero guarantee that I was going to be called up or be in the playoffs or World Series. Zero. And I went to AAA. And I never played AAA before. It's the first time I played. I went from AA to the big league. So I went to AAA and I was there for a couple of games. Mom. I was there a couple of games and something happened, or they released George Forster or something. There was some problem with I don't know what it was. And I got the call to go to the big leagues. I was there like 2 or 3 games. And like I said, nothing was promised, nothing was guaranteed. I rolled the dice. I think we said we roll the dice, you go down, do what you have to do, and you write your own destiny. And if you do well, they're going to want you. They want you for 87. Maybe you'll be part of this as well. And that's what I did. And as it turned out, I did come into the playoffs, World Series, and World Champions.
So
I never, yeah.
So I got 2 questions.
I thought you had one.
I got 2 now.
Oh.
And we might have to wrap it up. But the first question is the Darryl Strawberry story that you told me. What happened with that?
Well, there was an article in a paper that it was written that I said that he didn't play one day or missed a game or whatever, and obviously he's the best player on the team. You need him in the lineup. And I said, well, something to the effect where you need to play. I said, we need Straw in the lineup. He needs to play. He can't be out sick or whatever it was. And obviously it didn't come out exactly like that. But it wasn't a rip. I was saying, and not only that, I was the one that was playing for him. So why would I say anything bad? Mm-hmm. So by him not playing, I was the one that was the benefactor. I played instead of him. But that, I know what he could do and what I can do is just different. It was apples and oranges. So, and then Wally Backman said something. And Wally said, I don't know what he said either. But anyway, so it came out to head in the paper, and it didn't come out the way it was. I mean, if you read it, it's like I want him to play and be the best for the team. And he got mad about it. It came out of the paper. And then we were in the clubhouse, and I could see him walking, and he said, "What'd you say about me?" I went, "Oh, geez." I said, Straw is 6'6", and he's like this. And I said, I'm saying to myself, all right, we're going to go. I said, I'm going to get my butt kicked right here, but I ain't backing down. I ain't saying anything. I said, I didn't say anything. What do you want? Then Straw says, "Where's that little redneck?" And he's talking about Wally, because Wally's the one that said something.
Oh, man.
And we laugh about it today. It was nothing bad. It was all good. But when it transpired, it was funny. Like if you were on the onlook, you said, something's really happening. But I could tell you, Straw to me was probably the most talented player I ever saw coming up. I mean, could do everything, kind of like Barry Bonds. And I'm proud of him today because he's a minister now. He's overcome, like we all have skeletons in our closets, And Straw, we just saw him at Old Timers Day. He's doing great, man. He's doing absolutely great. So you maintain that. So it was kind of good. There's always arguments and stuff in the crowd. You've had them all the time, right?
Yeah, but I feel like you might be leaving out some details.
I probably am.
All right, we'll keep it. Last thing I want to ask you, we'll wrap it up, is what's your fondest memory of that '86 year when you guys won the World Series? What was like the most, the standout memory that you have of that run?
I don't know as an individual playing wise or just I guess capturing the title. I'll tell you what it was.
Because you were in that picture. You were right on top of that picture.
I'm going to tell you what it was, believe it or not. And you remember me telling you about your grandfather, about being everywhere, how I used to watch you. And I'd be in left field, and for some reason, it's my dad. I see him there. And I'd be in right field. He was all over, right? So we win the World Series, and we have the ticker tape parade, right? Greatest thing in the world, Canyon of Heroes. And I was with Mom in the car. Right? We're in a car. And we're going down, and there's confetti flying. There's millions of people in New York going down Battery Park. And I look up like this, and there's Pop on top of a building. I'm telling you, 10 stories high.
That
went,
is awesome.
Holy Christ, Pop, I'm like this. He's ready to remind that. That was your grandfather and grandmother. They were at the ticker tape parade, so that's one thing that, I'll never forget. Boy, that was kind of special.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on.
All right, man.
Thanks for being my guest.
Usually, you're my guest all the time.
Yeah, I have been for 32 years. Yeah.
You're off the payroll now, kid. You know that, right?
Well, thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Lineup with Elgin Mazzilli.
Michael?
He'll ask questions next time.
Yeah. Literally took all my questions.